Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. Your host, JP John Poz, with me today, very special guest. He is, of course, an announcer extraordinaire. DEFY, God, NXT is Rich Brennan. He is, of course, Mr. Rich Bocchini. Rich, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, John. Thanks for having me on.
What's going on in your world? What are you up to? I know you got a lot of big shows coming up.
Yeah, it's a little from column A, a little from column B, I guess. It's constant constant going. It's kind of a grind, but it's fun. This week actually, depending on when this goes out, as we're doing this today, I've got on Saturday I'm going to Pittsburgh for Enjoy Wrestling. And then I'm shooting down to Charlotte for Deadlock on Sunday, which is that's probably their biggest show to date at the Grady Cole Center. So pretty cool getting to go into like an old Crockett building.
Yeah.
Kent is on the card. FTR, I believe, is supposed to be on the card, but with the hurricane and all that. So I'm nobody's tipped me off. I'm expecting some changes, but nonetheless, we're excited for that, and hopefully everything goes off as planned with the other storm that's coming in now too. But I've got that coming up. I've got a couple of big DEFY shows coming up. We're doing a joint promotion out in Seattle the 9th and the 10th of November with TJPW and with DDT. So we've got that, and then at the end of the month, the end of November, we're going on the road the 29th, which is Black Friday. We're going to be in Brooklyn. It's DEFY and GCW in Progress together. It's actually two shows. And then that Sunday at Talia Hall in Chicago, it's going to be the same thing, DEFY, and then DEFY Progress, and then GCW after that. Then, more stuff coming up, more Deadlock in December, another DEFY Progress show in late December. So, I don't know how I keep doing it, but somehow the wheels keep turning, and here we are.
Seems like you're almost like the voice of the indies. You know what I mean? Like all these, DEFY, all these awesome shows, and you're working some GC Dubs, some Deadlock Pro. I mean, it seems like you might be the voice of the indies right now.
Somebody said that to me before, and I was like, no, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of us that are out there doing this. You know what I mean? I'm lucky enough that DEFY is a pretty well respected promotion. Deadlock's making a lot of waves. A lot of people are excited about the stuff that Deadlock is doing. Enjoy is, it's kind of its own thing. It's a very unique product. I think that they put out, very LGBTQ friendly, but still with logic and still with some actual pro wrestling sensibility instead of just, craziness. So, I have fun with those, and it's, there's other guys that are out there that are grinding, that are doing shows all over the place as well. So, I appreciate the pat on the back, but I'm just a cog in the wheel, I think.
Yep. But well traveled though. We were talking about going, all the way out west, and we're going to Charlotte, which is all the way out east, and New York, which is all the way up north. So very well traveled here, as you go around.
Yeah, I was actually looking at my American miles. I try to stick with. I used to be a Delta guy when I was at WWE, and then somehow or another I ended up getting like low level status on American, and so I've been trying to keep that up. I've never hit like the real high levels, but even at the low level, you at least get to like pick your seat ahead of time, or a better seat ahead of time. So that's just kind of what I'm aiming at, and hoping that I at least hit the the low level gold tier. You get an upgrade every now and then, but it's honestly, for me, it's getting the access to the preferred seat ahead of time, so you're not, you don't end up with that 29C next to the toilet.
Yes, very true.
Now, but I actually I'm not in Florida anymore. I know last time we talked, I think I was still living in I don't know if I was in Orlando or Gainesville at that point, but I actually got out of Gainesville last year, and I'm up in Boston now, which actually makes travel a little bit easier because it's a major city, it's a hub, fewer connections usually, but yeah, all over the place, man. I'm here, there, and West Coast, East Coast, and it's a lot to keep track of sometimes.
I can't believe you left Orlando. That's crazy.
Yeah, time to get out.
Too much.
Yeah, well, I left where I'd actually lived in Gainesville for I think 5 years. I when I moved there, I had only planned on 6 months, a year maybe. I didn't think it'd turn into 5 years. It turned into 5 years, and yeah, just about a year ago, I packed up and moved back. I'm from the Boston area to begin with. I grew up around here in Rhode Island, but yeah, packed up and been up here a year now.
And
so not far from you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and not too far. I'm not, well, kind of, but not too bad there as far as
Right.
just being in the Northeast. Yeah, not bad at all.
Yeah, it's funny. You go to other places, other parts of the country, and you think that, like I lived in Texas for a while, and if you drive from Houston to Dallas, that's 3 or 4 hours, and you're still in the same state. We're up here, 3 hours. I could probably be at your front door in 3.5 hours if I drove fast enough and the traffic was favorable. And that's what Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, right? 3 states, 4 states away. Yep. So it's it's kind of funny when you look at it like that.
And when you look at it, like, right, when you're doing the indies and you're well traveled, you're going all the way around. But I don't know. To me, though, it's more than just indies now because of Fight TV, Triller. Like, you know what I mean? It is you're the voice of the indies, but you're almost kind of like almost a little bit the voice of the internet, because all these shows are on where everybody can get them. So it's not, independents were very much like, hey, Northeast, this is the focus. You're in New Jersey, NWA New Jersey. But now it's like you could be everywhere.
Yeah. The the streaming is obviously it's changed everything, and we're seeing changes to that model going on right now. A couple of years ago, the subscription model was there where whatever, you could run a promotion and charge the $9.99 or the $15.99, and that's becoming tougher and tougher to do because there's so many different options. I was actually talking to a friend of mine and who's a promoter the other day, and he's actually looking at doing shows that are not going to be streamed anywhere, that like you have to be there to see it. Imagine that, right? Like, wow, here's this awesome match, and if you don't show up and see it, you're not going to see it. So it's kind of like the old days in a way like that. So I think there's some value to that. And this is not knocking anybody, because streaming has come a long way, and we're seeing better and better and better production value. And just as a caveat, I don't think it should always look like TV. I don't think it should strive to be AEW or WWE. It should have, kind of a raw feel to it. But I would argue that, especially for a lot of young guys, there's probably value in not being seen a whole ton while you're still getting your feet wet. So, that's one man's opinion.
That is true, because sometimes, not like Logan Paul, obviously he's like good right away and he's great, and they put him out there. Wow, this guy's impressive. Normally, when you're on your 5th, 6th match, you're terrible, you're green, you can't really you don't want people to see that, because then all of a sudden you get booked a little bit later, like, oh, I saw this guy, he's terrible, he's too green.
I kind of liken it to, I'm happy that when I started out doing not necessarily wrestling play-by-play, but when I started doing hockey play-by-play, that games were not on the internet. You know what I mean? It was local radio, and that was it. And thank God, because I listen back to some of those tapes now, and God, I cringe. But yeah, I think probably everybody does that. You look at pictures from 20 years ago and you're like, so it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things where, like, okay, it's great, you're getting the experience, but you don't want everybody to see that you're getting the experience, or you don't want everybody to hear it quite yet. You're not quite ready for the big time yet.
Well, you should be able to make mistakes and learn and screw up without having everybody, pointing a finger at you and laughing, or, having it becoming a meme or a clip on Botchamania or something like that. Yes. Because it's hard to, when you think that everybody's, it's very easy to get in your head when you're doing this stuff, when you think that everybody's critiquing you, or when you screw up and you feel kind of silly about it to begin with, and everybody just piles on, that makes it worse. It's hard to grow like that. But maybe the other side of that is you grow a thicker skin a little quicker. I don't know.
And it's funny, when we were kind of talking a little bit briefly on X, we were going back and forth. You said you were a little bit green in NXT. I didn't really think so, but you said you felt you were a little green in NXT.
Yeah. When we were kind of discussing, like, what are we going to talk about or whatever, it was pointed out to me that in, about 2 months, it's 10 years since NXT Our Evolution, which to me was that was the show that kind of put me on the map, so to speak. But, the culmination of the Sami Zayn, Adrian Neville NXT title chase, and then Kevin Owens debuting. And, you know, I've said for a number of years, if you want to look at a story build from, you know, A to Z that touches all the points and that's honestly really perfectly told with a great payoff, a great finish, everybody's happy, and then Owens comes out and ruins it for it. Such a perfect story. That I was lucky enough to be on the call for that. But yeah, I've watched it. I actually went back and watched it back, and I'm like, oh God, it was terrible. There was so much that I was learning. And you know, I at that point, I didn't think that I had anything figured out, but you know, I listen to it now and I'm like, man, I really had a long way to go.
It's funny, like when you think of looking it back, but it's very memorable. I don't know if like me as a fan, I don't think we're thinking about that just because very memorable moment. We thought it was great, no matter what. But you're obviously looking at it through a different lens.
Right. You know, you it's like anything else. You go back and, you know, and I think if you talk to somebody who's in a band or whatever, and they listen back to an early record or something, I wish we would have mixed that differently, or I wish I'm a drummer. And I've gone back and listened to stuff that I did back in the day. And like, I know every little, you know, screw up. I didn't really hit the hi-hat quite right there. And it's similar with doing commentary, I think.
Back to like that show and everything. You think that did launch you? You think that was like the big coming out party for yourself?
Yeah, I had been in NXT at that point for a little less than a year and spent, you know, I had done some TV. As a matter of fact, like the very first day that I was there, they kind of just, you know, I'm like you see the video of that penguin, you know, I'm talking about, and he doesn't want to go in. The guy, the other penguin just kind of dumps him in. That's what it was like. And I really had no idea what I was doing. But, you know, I got my confidence and they put me out there for that show. And, you know, by and large, it went all right. But yeah, in particular, like I remember Michael Cole, who was my boss at the time, and, you know, Hunter, you know, being pleased with it. And that kind of got me some other opportunities there.
When you working with Cole, how was he? I mean, obviously,
great.
We know him from the camera, but how is he as like the head of the communications over there?
Yeah, I got along with Cole. I get along with him great. We rode in the car together for one summer. You know, I still text him every now and then. You know, I'm not blowing up his phone a lot, but you know, a couple of months ago that, you know, something in my personal life that he had dealt with similarly. And I kind of texted him to get his 2 cents and his advice on a couple things, and, you know, was very helpful. And yeah, you know, I can't say enough good things about him. And, you know, and it's nice to see him now having fun, and you can hear it in his voice that he's having fun. He doesn't have Vince screaming in his ear. You know, he doesn't have Kevin done there, you know. It's just a different atmosphere. I don't watch a whole lot of WWE, but I did see some of WrestleMania, and I could just tell. You could just tell by his body language, the look on his face, just, you know, everything. So yeah, when we were texting, that's something that I had mentioned to him. I was like, "Hey, it seems like you're having fun." He's like, "Yeah." So, I always got along with Cole, and you know, he was good to me and very helpful to me.
It does seem like he's a bit different, like you said, without maybe somebody yelling in his ear, or maybe he's got a little bit more free form going on. But yeah, he definitely seems more excitable.
Yeah, and he can be a little more natural. He's not constantly, you know, repeating phrases that Vince has given him, and, you know, it's just a different mindset. And you know, there's I don't like to praise Vince McMahon given what we know now, but you know, you can't take away from what he gave to the business, and there is some good there. There's a lot of bad, but there is some good there. And I know people make fun of WWE announcing and Vinceisms and etc. You know, there are things that make sense, and there are, if you understand the reasons why he wanted some of those things done, it does make sense. If you know, if not being a little maybe heavy-handed and a little stale over time.
What did you think about him when he's in your ear, like when you're calling SmackDown and stuff? Like, was it a bit much?
Vince, yeah, it can be intimidating for sure. I mean, you know, he's an intimidating guy. He's a more eloquent Donald Trump, and I don't want to get into politics, but he's a more eloquent Trump. I'll just leave it like that.
when he's doing it, is he literally saying like championship opportunity and you know what I mean, like strap and it's
Yeah. I mean, there were certain things that you knew to stay away from, but that he would just bark in your ear about certain things. You maybe you're repeating a phrase too much, or you said something that he doesn't like. It's kind of hard to really to nail down. Like I'm trying to think. I remember doing a show at Madison Square Garden, and I kept mentioning the attendance. All right, we already know how many people are here. I'm like, oh, it was fucking sold out, the biggest, the most famous arena in the world. You'd think you'd want to, but
yeah.
So, I always say, what do I know?
But isn't that a little distracting when you're trying to announce a show?
Yeah, yes, yeah, very much so, very much so. And going back to Cole a little bit, that's something that to me always made him, in my eyes, the absolute best at working there and being what they want. I saw Cole get screamed at doing on cams. He's doing an on cam. He's tossing to the next video, and Vince is yelling in his ear as he's on camera, and he was just able to do it. That's a skill. You're always going to be produced anytime for anytime you're in live television. There's always somebody in your ear. There's always a producer and a director in your ear. That's just the way it is. People are counting you in and out of breaks, or they're updating you on information. Over there, it was just I think a little bit different. I don't know what it's like now, but I think at that point it was a little bit different, especially with Vince. And here's the thing: he's so particular because he was an announcer and he knew what he wanted.
Yeah.
Again, not justifying a lot of the bullshit, but Dave Grohl very famously re-recorded William Goldsmith's drum tracks on the first Foo Fighters record. Right.
Wow.
Yeah, because Dave Grohl's a perfectionist, and as a drummer, he knew what he wanted and he changed it. So, does it suck? Yeah, it sucks. It can't, it can be hard to deal with. On the other hand, you understand it. It's his show, so he can do what he wants.
I was talking to Todd Pettengill, and he was saying Kevin Dunn was in his ear, but it wasn't like him giving him directions. He said he would like try to get him to break and like tell him jokes and stuff. Like he's like, Todd, you really going with that line? Like I was surprised. I was like, wow, really?
Yeah. There was some of that for sure. And here's the thing too. Once you develop that rapport with a producer, that stuff happens. I remember doing some MLW stuff, and Dave Marquez had come in, and I'm busting Dave's balls and he's busting my balls back, and we're telling jokes in between breaks and stuff, and something would happen and he'd pipe in your ear with something to try to pop you while you're doing it. It's pretty common.
And I remember JR, right? Him and Lawler were doing commentary for Raw or whatever it was, and Jericho and Vince were in the ring. So obviously JR has nobody in his ear telling him what to say and what not to say. So Jericho says, "Hey Vance," and Lawler starts laughing. He goes, "Oh my God, he's calling him Vance," and he goes, "I heard you have a little pee-pee," and like, with the Jericho corny humor but funny humor, and JR goes, "Yeah, it's probably true." and then Lawler goes, "What? He does?" So you could tell, like, obviously there's nobody in his ear. They could say whatever they want and like get away with it.
Right. Yeah. There's always that fun and the, trying to keep it light and trying to laugh a little bit, on the other hand, like if I'm sure you've seen the dark side of the ring about Owen Hart. Right.
Yep. And,
Jim Ross's line in that, "Hey, do we have an update on Owen?" "Yeah, he's dead. You're back live in 7, 6, 5, like, holy shit. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, awful.
But, we could go off on a whole tangent on that, but yeah, I mean, so you're dealing with both sides of that usually,
Just crazy to think like, okay, you're calling a live show. You're trying to focus in, right? I mean, you're trying to focus on the monitor probably and, get the right line or whatever. And then you just have somebody in your ear going, "No, say this." I feel like it would be, a bit distracting at some point where you might be a little off on the commentary.
Sometimes, it's nice to have somebody reminding you, "Hey, hit this, go here." We do when I do Deadlock Pro, like it's me, Caprice Coleman and Veda Scott, and I think we have really good chemistry. They're in our ear, but it's not, like hammering you with stuff. It's reminding, "Hey, this big move, I'll be the first one. I'll be the first one to admit at this point, so I forget moves sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, to me, that's helpful when they're like, it's reminding you of what the finisher is, because I don't want to screw up the finisher. That's the big thing. You can screw up another move, or you can just talk about the impact, or kind of be vague. Oh, you really flattened them there or whatever. But on the finish, you really want to get the finish in. And sometimes it's in a split second if you don't have it written down, especially with the amount of stuff that I'm doing. I don't want, again, I hate to sound like I'm humble bragging, but I mean, I'm doing a lot of stuff, and it's hard to keep track of that stuff sometimes. So having somebody guiding you and keeping you on track, to me, I welcome it. To me, it's important. I think it's a good thing.
And remember what Vince used to say, "Oh, what a maneuver."
Yeah.
Instead of saying what the move was, he would just say, "What a maneuver."
Which
nobody said anything about it.
I have a whole philosophy that, moves don't matter. They do and they don't, right? And I'm way oversimplifying by saying that they don't matter. But the example would be like, sometimes you'll do a show and you'll talk to the guy ahead of time. Hey, do you have anything you want us to get over? And they'll give you a list of 10 moves. Oh, I call my clothesline the blah blah blah, and I call my headlock. It's like, all right, dude, how about we get your finish over first, and then we'll worry about what you call your drop kick.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And to me, it's more, you hear about storytelling, and it's maybe a very WWE thing, but even if you go back, like, it was never just about calling moves, hammerlock, toe lock, and it was never about that. And somewhere along the way, I don't know if it's internet culture, I don't know if it's the, whatever, the message boards. Oh, it doesn't call enough moves. Well, what is the move? To me, what is the move doing? How does it play into the match? Why does it matter? Why is it important? Is a whole lot more important to me than, remembering if it's a dragon suplex or a tiger suplex. Right. Hopefully you remember it, but if you don't, does it really matter in the big scheme of things? And your color guy probably knows anyway. So, maybe that sounds lazy, or like you're not on top of it, but to me, that's not that's not what's important. The important thing is, what is it doing and what does it mean in the match?
Yeah, it's kind of like almost like in between the moves, what are the guys doing? Like it's not just the moves and calling out moves for sure.
It's not you're not calling a skateboarding competition, a figure skating competition. And I think there's some fans that maybe view it like that, and I'm not knocking them. I think there's a lot of wrestling fans that don't watch sports, so they don't have that. They don't understand the difference between a play-by-play guy and a color guy, for instance. I see that with a lot of wrestling fans. And yeah, I think it's because, maybe you don't watch football, you don't watch baseball, you don't watch hockey or whatever. You watch wrestling, and it's kind of its own thing. So it's just, something you got to keep in mind, I guess, in the back of your head when you're doing it. Or I try to.
Like even Gorilla Monsoon, one of the best ever. He would talk about moves sometimes, but it was much more of like the story and what was going on. He was putting over the characters. He was putting over how devastating. He wasn't going, oh, there's the tope con heel or whatever.
Right.
Well, I mean, they didn't really have that back then, but yeah.
If have you watched the Vince thing on Netflix?
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay, what I don't know if this stood out to you or not. And I remember telling my wife this, just talking to her, kind of explaining. She's not a wrestling fan, besides what she knows from me. But it's about, and how many times did you hear this on the Netflix thing? It's about emotion. You're selling emotion.
Yeah.
And that was something that was drilled into me very, very early on from Cole and from everybody at WWE. You're not selling. Yeah, there's a high spot's cool, and the move is cool to watch. The guy coming off Superfly coming off the top of the cage or whatever. Like, that's cool. It's a cool visual, but what does it mean? Right. And you can only do so many, you can only have pyro so often, right? After a while, the pyro starts to lose its effect. And it's the same thing to me with big spots like that. So it's emotion. What does it mean? Why do you care? Why should I care?
Yep.
So
I feel like too, people kind of don't realize it. You know what I mean? Like they're almost getting lost in it. It is about the emotion.
Yeah. It's, to me, when it's done its best, it's about emotion. It's about, why do I care? And it's I'm not a fan of the wink and nod style of wrestling. I'm really not. Stop reminding me that it's not real.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's that's how I try to approach it. And for the most part, I think with the companies that I work for, I think the philosophy is by and large the same. So I'm not knocking comedy stuff. I think there's always room for comedy. I think there's always room for levity, but at the end of the day, the basis of what we do is that these two people have an issue and they're going to settle it in the ring, and it's a competition. Yep. And that's right. We say it all the time. You don't watch Chicago Fire and watch them run into the building and break into a dance routine while they're fighting the fire. Like, it just completely takes you out of it. So
yeah.
Some fans like that style of wrestling. It's not for me. So
hey, look at Drew Punk, bloody bloodbath. That was all story. I mean, that was all.
Yeah.
And then the announcers putting over, these guys hate each other. And, that's why it got over so good.
Yeah, I mean, any of the big stories, I always go back to Hogan Andre at WrestleMania 3. It's if you break that match down, it's not a good match. It's not a work rate match. It's a terrible match. Really, it didn't matter.
Yeah, it might be the best WrestleMania match because it's the most famous and it's the most iconic.
Yeah, and like I said, work rate wise, I don't know that anybody's going to necessarily watch that and be like, well, this is, except for maybe some of the selling, right? But even that's kind of So I don't know. It's different flavors, I guess. But I think sounds like we agree anyway. More or less on the
definitely
right.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
With NXT, does Michael Cole, is he the one that kind of hired you and brought you into WWE to begin with? Was he the guy?
Yeah, Cole was at the time the head of hiring announcers, training announcers, that type of thing. My understanding is that he's not in that role anymore. He's talent, which probably is another reason why he's having a lot more fun, because he doesn't have to deal with office stuff. But yeah, at the time, Cole was the guy that was hiring people, and had to run it by Hunter, and I think had to run it by Vince probably or whatever. But yeah, Cole was the guy that brought me in.
What do you think about Triple H as your boss? How was he?
He was fine. I didn't really deal with him a whole lot, to be honest.
Really?
No. I mean, he was at NXT all the time, but he wasn't, he was busy with, the people that were drawing money and, going over matches and going over stories and going over those things. Every now and then I'd hear from him in the headset, or, hey, how's it going? Or, we talk for a second or whatever, but what was I going to bother him with? Right. He's talking to Kevin or Sammy or, whoever about their money match. It's not worried. No, he's not worried about the, what I mean? At that point, the fourth string announcer or whatever. Right.
I figured though, maybe because the announcers are very pivotal to what he wants to get over, I figured maybe he would have like meetings with you guys, but I guess not.
I think that was filtered through Cole. That's why Cole was there.
So he was a big part of NXT. Michael Cole, meaning bigger part than NXT that people realize. Yep.
He would be there every TV taping. He was producing the announcers. He was coaching the announcers. He would, we were able to have him Skype in, and we could do commentary sessions at the Performance Center and just call matches. And he'd be at his house or be on the road or whatever, and would be able to watch and kind of produce us and critique us and yell at us when we needed to be yelled at, and so on and so forth. So he was a great resource to have, for sure.
Sounds like probably more freedom in NXT than necessarily when you're on WWE TV. Like, there's definitely going to be more freedom.
Oh, for sure. And at the time it was taped, so you can fix stuff if it's terrible, which we did from time to time. There were, matches were flat out told that was horseshit. Do it again. So,
wow.
Yeah. And if there's no sugarcoat it, it's like, that sucked. That was terrible. You totally missed the story on this. Go back. You guys got to do it again. All right.
Damn. Did that happen often or not really?
I'm sorry. What?
Did it happen often or not really?
A handful of times. I wouldn't, it wasn't like every show or whatever, but every now and then there'd be something that we'd just miss or just not be good. It just wouldn't, the chemistry wasn't there or whatever. I wouldn't say it happened a lot, but a couple times for sure. Yeah.
Who do you think you had the best chemistry with as an announcer in WWE?
Over there, I thought Graves and I together were good. Me and Graves, me and Byron, Byron and Graves together, I think as a team we're pretty good. I loved working with Booker when I did SmackDown for a bit. I worked with Book. I worked with Jerry Lawler. He was super easy to work with. King was just so easy to work with. And Booker's the guy that really helped break me into to the business and helped me get on WWE's map. So to be able to work with him at that level was pretty cool.
How did Booker do that? Like, what was the correlation?
I lived in Houston at the time, and I started working for his promotion for ROW. In God, was that 2011? I think 2012, 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. I forget now exactly. But I came in, I did commentary at his show for a year and worked on the website and did stuff behind the scenes, promotions, all the stuff that goes into helping run an indie. Just being involved in that. And I would be at the school all the time, just trying to learn and absorb as much knowledge as I could. I had a background in announcing anyway. I was a hockey announcer for a long time. And I'd say I had a conversation with him one day about it. And I was like, what do you think? Should I send my stuff? He's like, yeah. So anyway, he helped kind of grease the skids for me. And Booker's very, very, very pivotal in, the fact that I'm even talking to you today. So can't say enough good things about working with Book.
Beat easy, man. Obviously, he's a big part of NXT now, and ROW is still going on.
Yep, and they're finally letting some of the talent go down there to Houston and work with them. And I know that's something that he'd wanted to do for a while. Like, hey, you got these guys that are just kind of sitting there. Like, send them to me for a couple of months. Let me use them. But there was a while where they didn't want guys working outside shows because injury concerns and that type of thing. That's obviously changed a bit, and I think it's great for Book and his promotion. I think it's awesome for the kids that are there that are learning too.
Yeah, I do think it's great that, okay, if they cut down on house shows or maybe they're doing less shows, but the guys need work and need to be with an outside audience or get outside the performance center and kind of, venture out and really do the indie scene. That it is great that there is Booker's company, a couple others, TNA even to a degree.
Yeah, whoever thought we'd see that, right? That's nuts. That's insane to me. And I mean, great for them, right? I mean, I'm not knocking it. It's just, it's crazy when you that's the company that we thought would be gone by now, right? But somehow it's still, and that's good for everybody. The more places there are to work, the better it is for for the business. And but yeah, the performance center originally, like the whole idea of it being in Florida was because they had all those, they had FCW, right? And you had the Florida loop or the coconut loop as they call it, and I guess they still kind of do it. I don't know that it's as frequent as when I was there. When I was there, we were running, at least 2, if not 3 shows a week. And, you're Friday in Tampa, Saturday in, Fort Pierce or something. And then, I actually, Sundays we didn't really run, but it would have been Thursdays. But, say Thursday in Orlando and Friday, Fort Pierce, Saturday you're in Tampa, and the next week you're in Jacksonville, so you're always around, and you can't replicate that experience being out in front of a live crowd, whether it's 50 people or 500 or 5,000.
And I feel like it's a little bit different whether when it's Performance Center or maybe in Full Sail versus like a other crowd. I feel like that crowd might be almost the same crowd all the time. This is going to be different crowds.
Yeah, and I think the crowds at least at that point for a lot of those shows, it's kind of like going to kind of remind, like going to like a AA baseball game or a single A baseball game, right? Where you're a little more forgiving. You're not expecting that, that they're, if they botched trying to turn the double play, you're like, all right, if the guy fields it at third and throws it over the first baseman's head, you're like, single A, right? Like that's why the guys are learning. They're getting their feet under them. So I think there's a little more. There's a little more forgiveness maybe in kind of like accepting, okay, like, we're not going to do the "you screwed up" chant or whatever bullshit, right?
Yeah, definitely more forgiving. Did you like those crowds better, like the Full Sail crowds and stuff? Because they seem pretty into it. I know it's mostly the same crowd, but
the Full Sail crowds were great, and the crowds in Fort Pierce, we always drew real well, and you'd see some of the same people, but for the most part, it was a fun crowd. It was like I said, they were a little more forgiving, but they were into it. They knew who people were. They were into it, and they were excited to. I always got the sense that they were excited to see. There'd be like the Kentas or the Kevin Owens or the Sammys or some of those big name like indie guys that came in. But for some of the younger kids, you get the sense that they're like, oh yeah, I'm on the ground. I'm on the ground floor of this. It's like going to see the opening band. You know what I mean? And you see the opening band in the club, and then you kind of follow them, and now they're headlining the festival, and you kind of feel like you're on that ride with them.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great analogy. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I feel like too with NXT now, the fact that they're on TV, USA obviously, but now even CW, that you lose a little bit of that though, as far as like being on the ground floor, because it almost feels like them already.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just because they're on TV. Back then, it wasn't necessarily TV; it was more the network.
Well, it was kind of like what we were talking about too, right? Like, does every match that happens everywhere always need to be streamed or put on YouTube or whatever? And that, my answer to that question is no, absolutely not. It doesn't have to be. So maybe you lose some of that you lose the developmental aspect of it, because you can't really put developmental on television, because if you screw up on TV, then right, it doesn't make sense. So I'm not that in tune to what they're doing over there right now as to how that's set up and what kind of developmental process they have going on, aside from, like we said, letting guys go to, bookers or some of the other, maybe more respected promotions that they can go and they can work with somebody and, relatively be trusted that the person's not going to break their leg on purpose or something. Right.
Right. It is interesting though. Like they're developmental, but they have their own TV show, but Punk is on and Orton, like, you know what I mean? It's like, is it really developmental? I was like,
well, when I remember in 16, right after, or right before, maybe it was right before Brooklyn, the first, that first Brooklyn takeover. I remember Hunter telling us, and like, this is no longer, this is the third brand. It's not developmental anymore. So, yeah, I don't know what the mindset is on it now, but
yeah, flat out, like Randy Orton is wrestling on NXT. You know what I mean? It's like it's
right,
definitely it's definitely a third brand.
Well, there was always like, I guess it's not presented like this, but I mean, how many times did guys in the big leagues go down to the AA team for a rehab start? Right.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Garrett Cole was just in New Jersey, earlier this year. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's always that where a guy, maybe has surgery and comes back, so they'll pitch a game in the Florida State League or something, and then okay, we're gonna and then move him up until it feels like he's ready to come back to the bigs. I guess it's not presented like that, but I could see where maybe that could work.
It's so interesting now. They're getting their own deal and they're getting paid to be on TV. It's like right. I mean, from one aspect where the NXT started to where they are now, it's night and day. It's crazy.
It's it's interesting too. You go back to that, like when I first started going, or when I first started working there, and actually even before that, because I have family in Florida, so I would go to like some of the FCW shows, and I remember going shows there, maybe 50 people there.
Wow.
Like not well attended at all. And even in the very early days when I was there in 2014, like the attendance wasn't always great, but and then the network came around, it kind of built and built and built, and to me, it really filled a void that I think a lot of fans wanted, which was just like pro wrestling presented as pro wrestling without a lot of bullshit, without a lot of hokiness, kind of Crockett, Dusty era-ish, kind of, sort of, the way it was booked. It was logical. It made sense, but with WWE's production value. And I think at the time that I know as a fan, I was looking for something like that for years. I guess maybe Ring of Honor would have been the closest thing to that, but not everybody's going to have access to that, or you're not going to know where to look, or et cetera, et cetera. So for me, for a long time, I was like, wait, where's the wrestling that I like? I don't like these, the overly scripted promos where they're, the famous WWE shot where they're looking at the monitor sideways in the back and nodding along as the matches go, that type of bullshit. I was like, this is stupid. Like, just give me wrestling, give me competitive, stuff that I could just believe is actually happening. So,
and NXT at one point, I mean, they started bringing in all those indie guys, like you mentioned, Owens and Zayn and Kenta. I mean, so it almost became not really developmental, it almost became like its own thing. And they were trying to put on the best wrestling. They were trying to get the best wrestlers in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you look at our evolution, you go to Brooklyn, the show in Dallas with Shinsuke and Sami, like it really was its own thing. And, it was a fun time to be a part of it. It's very cool. Very lucky that I was there.
When you look at it, right, like you're a part of something, like, you know what I mean? That you're really ingrained in something because you kind of making a movement there. They're becoming the third brand. They're becoming bigger than what you think. And Triple H is really pushing it, and the crowds keep getting bigger and bigger. He's selling out big venues. Was it upsetting to be released because, like, you thought almost like you were going to be a part of that, like like you're a part of the evolution of it, then you're just gone. Like, oh, I thought I was building something with them there.
Yeah, of course it was. It's how I made my living. You packed up and moved to Florida for that, right? And then, I mean, it was cool. It was a rocket ride, and it was cool. It could be stressful at times. There are things that I look back at and I'm like, I wish I would have done that different, or I wish I would have handled this differently, or maybe pushed back a little bit here with, certain people or whatever. But whatever, it was fun. I get to be involved in something that, honestly, like a lot of people just, they dream of it, and I was lucky enough to be there. So it's more being thankful than, being upset or being whatever. Now, having said that, would I have liked to have stayed at NXT? Yes. Did I really enjoy doing SmackDown? Not really. No, I would have preferred to be doing NXT at that point. And a lot of that is because I still felt like I had a lot to learn. I really felt at that point that I still had a lot to learn about what they wanted and how they wanted it done, and big picture stuff that 10 years later, I get a lot of this stuff now because I've called so many more matches,
Yep.
And you're able to see this stuff a little, but I was still very early in my wrestling career, and even really understanding what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're selling, what it is that we're trying to put together and get across. So, yeah, would I have liked to stay put for another year or two and, banked a little more money? Sure. Bought the house or whatever. The other side of that is, and I joke about it all the time, but I think it's true, I probably would have had a heart attack had I stayed there. So,
oh my God, that's not good.
It could be stressful. It could be really stressful. So, yeah, I'm just, there's good and there's bad from it. Mostly good. I had fun. I got to be part of something that, again, as a little kid, you see it. Oh, that'd be cool to be a part of that. But you don't ever think you're going to, it was like you were living inside the TV somehow. Right. It was like,
yep.
It was pretty cool. So, and I still, obviously I'm still doing stuff now, and it's indies and it's fun, and there's a lack of bullshit. If there's too much bullshit, then I walk away. I don't have to be a part of it. And, the stuff that I'm doing now, I'm doing it because I enjoy it and I want to do it. And it's fun. I think, we're putting out a product at all the places that I'm working. Like, I'm proud of the product that we're putting out, and I'm proud of the style of wrestling that we're doing. So it's all in all, it's a good thing.
It's almost as if you shouldn't have got brought up, right? You shouldn't have got called, or didn't want to get called up to SmackDown.
Well, yeah. I didn't think I was ready. I remember even saying that to Cole. I'm not ready. Well, if we didn't think you're ready, we wouldn't bring you up. Okay. What are you going to do? Say no? Right.
Right.
So,
but is that Vince's call?
No, I don't know how it all came together, to be honest. I really don't. I have no idea. I don't know. Somebody thought I was Cole. I don't know. It was, I don't know. Somebody thought I was ready, and I didn't think I was. And, history perhaps bears that out a little bit. I don't know. But, I'm glad I got to do it. I would have much rather preferred to stay at NXT and kind of just continue to learn, maybe in less of a harsher spotlight than I was. But, glad I got to do it. No regrets.
Did you like Byron Saxton? Were you a fan of?
Yeah, I love Byron. Yeah, I still chat with him quite a bit. A lot of times they'll, like when I was living in Gainesville, Florida, he went to UF. He's a big Gators fan, so a lot of times he'd come up for games, and we'd get together and get something to eat and just talk for a little bit or whatever. They were here in Boston, and it was right after Christmas last year. And texted him and went over to the hotel and sat with him and caught up with him in the lobby, and we just BS'd for a little bit. And yeah, I consider you don't always meet a lot of good people in wrestling, or people that you can trust. You meet a lot of people, ton of people. You don't make a lot of good friends. Byron is one of those good friends for me.
Why is that for wrestling? Is it just it breeds a certain competition, or?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's like any form of entertainment. It's cutthroat. Everybody's trying to get ahead. Yeah, and that's just the way it is. You have to put yourself first. You have to be willing to, cut somebody off at the knees or stab somebody in the back. And not everybody's cut out to do that. I'm not. That's not the kind of person I am. So maybe it wasn't the best environment for me. But Byron, I would joke with Byron all the time, like, I know why you're still here. He's like, why? I'm like, because you're the one that's actually stirring up all the shit. Because everybody talks to you. You're actually the guy stirring the pot. And he had a good laugh. And I don't think that at all. I just, that was a joke with him. But no, Byron's a great dude. And I think he's really good at what he does. I really do. And a lot of people give him shit, but I think he's a great guy and an excellent commentator.
What about Tom Phillips?
He's an excellent announcer.
As far as relationship, didn't have one with him as far as NXT?
He's a good announcer.
What about, I know you mentioned Lawler, but what about him as a commentator at that point? Because I feel like, he's great, but I don't know, like maybe past his prime, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe, who am I to say? As far as Jerry, like, he didn't have to, like, he didn't really do prep. He didn't really do notes. He just knew.
Really?
Yeah, he just knew instinctively what was going on, and he could tell the story. It really is amazing. He would just show up. He'd be like, all right, what are we doing? All right, and he'd go down there and he just nailed it. And yeah, I mean, there's some of the stuff outdated or whatever, puppies and all that stuff, sure, but when it comes to psychology, like, he just got it. Didn't matter what the match was, or he got it. He just got it, and he was super easy to work with.
That's funny. No notes. He's just like, all right, let's just go by the seat of my pants. We're just gonna go.
I know. He had like a notebook where he had like, all these one-liners and just little things, right? And he would, you try to work some of those in, but as far as what was going on or whatever, he just got it. Yeah,
Did you have like a big notebook? Did you have a lot of notes?
Yes and no. I actually I would have stuff on an iPad, but stuff would change so much. And yeah, I mean, I had my own way of doing notes. So most guys, I think, do have their own way of doing it. So yeah, but I mean, it's not like I had like one-liners. I mean, he literally had like just like pages of it, just funny stuff or anecdotes or things like that.
Did any of the wrestlers like try to buddy up to you? Because I feel like that would be a smart way to go about it. If not necessarily buddies with you, but like giving you more information, telling you more about them, trying to like get them over.
Yeah.
If you like them, maybe psychology wise, like, oh, I'm going to help this guy get over because I can do that from behind the.
Well, the guys were encouraged, and they still are, and it still blows my mind on the indies how few like wrestlers actually reach out. And even when you ask for stuff, if I send 20 people on a show an email, hey, send me stuff to talk about. If I get 2 responses, that's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep. And to me, it's something that a lot of guys on the indies don't take advantage of, because like, if you don't give me stuff, I'm just going to make shit up. Right. I'm just going to like come up with stuff that I think makes sense, and you may
Yep.
like it and you may not. Right. And that's not to say like I'm purposely like trying to dig it in it, but like, you need stuff to talk about. If you don't give me something,
Yep.
right. So, I mean, you try to get stuff from them ahead of time. Maybe you talk to them before the match, but there's a handful of guys that would send you like, here's the 3 main moves that I use. This is my finisher. This is kind of what my mindset is. I was, I'll use Trisha Dora, for example. She sent me like tons of notes and a lot of cool stuff. Like, she was an MP, right? So she's like, it made me mentally and physically tough. She enjoys playing chess, right? So she can liken that to being in the ring, thinking ahead. Now, all these things kind of come together, so you can kind of start telling the story about somebody.
Yep.
And embellish some of those stories a little bit. But, having said that, if you don't send stuff, then we're just left to kind of wonder and kind of guess, and we may infer something that maybe isn't what you want. So, the moral of the story is, yes, talk to the announcers. Like FTR, I remember them coming up to us all the time with stuff. List of, hey, talk about this. We're going to try to use this move. Like, those guys are great with that stuff.
See, to me, that's like, especially like Trisha Dora, like, that's perfect. Like, that's exactly what you want, because he's going to help you get over in the match. I mean, that's just like, I don't know, more common sense, but obviously it's not that common.
Yeah, it's, I think some guys are maybe, you're busy, or I don't know. I don't know. Like Effie is another great example where he had like a one sheet that explained who and what Effie is. And that was great, right? Because he's such an interesting character. Who I should note, like, psychology wise, basics, like, he gets it. A lot of people see, this ostentatious character or whatever, and doing a lot of crazy shit, but he's a guy that gets it. He's very, very smart when it comes to basic psychology, and making that work for his character. But yeah, it's something that I think all up in, I shouldn't even say all up and comers. I mean, anybody, you should talk to the announcers. We're the ones that are telling your story. We're the ones that are plugging whatever's coming up and trying to get your stuff over. So help us, help you. That's the public service announcement. But yeah, it's talk to any announcer. Joe Dombrowski and I would joke about this all the time. Talk to anybody that does this on a regular basis, and I bet you they'd say the same thing. If you send out 20 emails, if you get 2 back, it's a lot.
Damn, gotcha.
Yeah.
Seems like
kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, seems like it definitely should be more, that they should be on the ball about it, and
you would
talking to you guys. Yeah, you would think, getting in your face and talking to you guys and emailing you guys and texting you, like, hey, say this, do that.
Have a one sheet, right?
Yep.
If you're in a band, if you're in a band and you're trying to get booked, you have a one sheet. You're probably sending it to the promoter, so why wouldn't you send that to the announcers as well? But
yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Once again, what do I know?
So as we hit towards the wind down here, we head towards the finish. Got to ask you about Raven. What do you think about doing the show with Raven, doing a podcast with Raven, the crazy mind of Raven, and my buddy Joe Feeney? What do you think about doing that show?
Well, Feeney needs to be, strung up and beaten with a wet noodle.
Yes, I agree.
I like Feeney. He and I disagree on certain things, but I like Joe. And honestly, like, at this point, that show, we don't even talk about wrestling. I can't even really, we bring up wrestling and Raven's like, it's enough wrestling. At this point, it's 3 guys that have been doing this thing for, I don't even know how long it's been, 4 years, 5 years. How did it all, you know what I mean? How did it all start? We're just 3 guys that we get together and we bullshit for an hour and a half. And there's some weeks when it's entertaining, and there's some weeks where I'm sure it's just fucking god awful. But, I think the people that do listen, I think they appreciate just kind of the silliness of it, and that we're just kind of riffing. We don't really have any agenda. We're not, we're just talking about life and talking about stuff and poking fun at each other and You know? So Raven's a very smart dude.
Yeah, seems like very high IQ, like one of those
Yeah.
type of guys. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he's very, very, very sharp, and yeah, you know. So I
So
have fun with it.
So what's next for you? Not obviously Raven effect aside. What's next for you? What do you got again? What do you got coming down the pike?
Well, so as far as shows coming up on the, let's see, as we're doing this today, so on the 12th of October, it's Pittsburgh. Enjoy Wrestling, enjoy-wrestling.com. That'll be a lot of fun. Then on the 13th, Deadlock Pro Wrestling in Charlotte. Kenta makes his Deadlock debut coming up at the middle of November, the 9th and 10th. 3 shows actually in Seattle, Washington Hall. It's TJPW makes their Seattle debut, DDT and DEFY coming together for 3 shows over the weekend. And then shows with GCW, Progress, and DEFY coming up on the 29th of November in Brooklyn, and then the 1st of December in Chicago. So that's the immediate upcoming calendar.
And where can everybody follow you if they want to follow you on social media?
Well, I still use the Twitter, kind of. It's still there. I'm not on it as much as I used to be, for various reasons, which if you know anything about me, you can probably figure out, but not a fan of Elon. I'll just leave it at that, but I'm still there now. I'll post there every now and then, at Rich Bocchini. If you can see this, you can see my name there. It's just at my name. And if you're listening, it's at Rich Bocchini. I'm on Instagram as well. It's more of a, if you know where to find it, you know where to find it. It's more just like friends and family kind of stuff, but it is public. So if that's something you want to find, go nuts.
So no dark or no black MAGA hat for you then. Okay. whatever that was.
Fuck no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Rich, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
John, thanks for having me. It's always good to talk to you, man. Thanks.